She discovered she'd been betrayed for 2 years, but what happened next left her ex-husband on his knees, begging for her to come back. This is Marina's story, the woman who transformed the biggest humiliation of her life into her greatest victory. Get ready for a journey that will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, betrayal, and the power of a woman who decides she won't accept crumbs. Marina Williams stood before the ornate mirror in her Kensington salon, her reflection commanding attention even in the dim morning light. At 35, she possessed a timeless beauty that made heads turn wherever she went. Her rich, dark skin glowed with a natural radiance, and her perfectly sculpted features spoke of strength and grace. She adjusted the silk scarf around her neck, a signature touch that had become her trademark among London's elite clientele. The salon, nestled in one of London's most prestigious neighbourhoods, buzzed with the quiet efficiency that had made Marina's reputation. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over mahogany stations, and the scent of expensive hair products mingled with fresh orchids that adorned every corner. This was her kingdom, built from nothing but determination and an unwavering belief in herself. "Mrs. Williams, your 9 o'clock is here," announced Sophia, her young assistant, with barely concealed excitement. "Lady Catherine specifically requested you for her event styling." Marina nodded with professional composure, though inside she felt the familiar surge of pride. 6 years ago, when she'd first opened these doors, she never imagined she'd be styling royalty and celebrities. Her journey from a small-town dreamer to London's most sought-after hairstylist had been paved with 16-hour days, countless sacrifices, and an iron determination to prove that excellence knew no boundaries. But as she prepared for another day of transforming her clients, Marina couldn't shake the hollow feeling that had been growing inside her chest for months. Her marriage to Rael Williams, once the fairy tale romance she'd believed would last forever, had become a beautiful facade, hiding an increasingly painful reality. Rael had been her first love, her first everything. They'd met during her final year at university, when she was just a young woman with big dreams and an even bigger heart. He was already making waves in the tech industry, brilliant and ambitious, with the kind of magnetic charm that made everyone want to be near him. At 29, he was everything she thought she wanted: successful, handsome, and seemingly devoted to her. Their wedding had been the event of the year. Marina had walked down the aisle in a custom gown that hugged her, curves perfectly, feeling like the luckiest woman alive. Rael had looked at her with such love, such promise, that she'd believed nothing could ever shake their foundation. But 6 years had taught her that love, no matter how pure, couldn't survive in a garden where only one person was willing to tend. The morning routine at the salon provided a welcome distraction from her troubled thoughts. Marina moved through her appointments with the grace of a dancer, her skilled hands working magic on each client. She listened to their stories, their triumphs and heartbreaks, offering not just beauty treatments, but genuine human connection. This gift for making others feel seen and valued had been the secret to her success. "Marina, darling, you've outdone yourself again," gushed Lady Catherine, as Marina put the finishing touches on an elaborate updo. "I don't know how you do it, but you always know exactly what I need." Marina smiled genuinely, her first real smile of the day. "Beauty isn't about changing who you are, Lady Catherine. It's about revealing the queen you've always been." These moments reminded her why she'd fallen in love with her craft. In her chair, every woman became royalty, regardless of their background or circumstances. She'd built her business on this philosophy, creating a space where beauty was inclusive and transformative. As the day wound down, Marina found herself alone in the salon, the silence amplifying the thoughts she'd been avoiding. Her phone buzzed, with a text from Rael: "Working late again. Don't wait up." The message was typical, short, dismissive, and carrying an undertone of irritation, as if her mere existence was an inconvenience. She couldn't remember the last time he'd asked about her day, complimented her work, or shown any genuine interest in her life. Their conversations had become purely functional, limited to household logistics and social obligations. Marina walked to the large window overlooking the bustling street below. Couples strolled hand in hand, their laughter carrying on the evening. Breeze. She pressed her palm against the cool glass, remembering when she and Rael used to walk these same streets. Dreaming about their future together. The transformation had been gradual, so subtle she hadn't noticed until it was almost complete. Rael's initial pride in her accomplishments had slowly morphed into indifference, then barely concealed resentment. Success had changed him, or perhaps it had simply revealed who he'd always been beneath the charming exterior. As his tech company grew and his wealth multiplied, Rael had become obsessed with image and status. He wanted a wife who would complement his success story, beautiful enough to be envied, sophisticated enough for high society, but ultimately decorative. Marina's independence and growing reputation seemed to threaten whatever narrative he'd constructed about their life together. At 38, Rael Williams was undeniably attractive. His success had only enhanced his natural magnetism, and he'd learned to wield his charm like a weapon. Marina had watched him in social situations, seen how easily he could make anyone feel like the most important person in the room. The problem was he'd stopped using that charm on her years ago. The drive home to their Hampstead mansion felt longer than usual. The house, a testament to Rael's success, sat on a tree-lined street where privacy was purchased with steel gates and elaborate security systems. Marina had once loved this house, had spent hours decorating it and imagining raising children here. Now it felt more like a gilded cage, beautiful but suffocating. The marble foyer echoed her footsteps as she entered, the sound lonely in the vast space. Rael's presence filled every corner of this house, from the modern art that reflected his taste to the home office that was strictly off-limits. Marina's touches were subtle, relegated to spaces he deemed unimportant. She climbed the curved staircase to their bedroom, her hand trailing along the polished banister. The room was a study in understated luxury, all neutral tones and expensive fabrics. But like everything else in their marriage, it lacked warmth, lacked the passionate connection that had once defined them. Marina changed into comfortable clothes and settled into the reading chair by the window, a book in her lap that she couldn't quite focus on. This had become her nightly ritual, waiting in a house that felt increasingly foreign, for a husband who seemed more like a stranger with each passing day. The sound of Rael's key in the door came just after midnight. Marina heard him moving. Through the house, his footsteps confident and unhurried. When he finally appeared in their bedroom doorway, she was struck again by how handsome he was. Success had refined his features, and his tailored clothing emphasized his athletic build, but his eyes, once warm when they looked at her, were now distant and evaluating. "You're still awake," he observed, loosening his tie with practiced efficiency. "Long day at the salon," Marina replied, though she knew he wouldn't ask for details. "How was your meeting?" Rael shrugged, already turning toward his walk-in closet. "Productive. We're expanding into 3 new markets. Should increase revenue by 40% over the next year." It was the most he'd shared about his work in months, though Marina suspected it wasn't meant as intimacy, but as a reminder of his importance. She watched him move through his nighttime routine with mechanical precision, everything in its proper place, including her. As Rael settled into bed, maintaining careful distance between them, Marina stared at the ceiling and wondered when she'd stopped fighting for something that might have already been lost. She'd built an empire from nothing, had transformed herself from a small-town girl into a successful entrepreneur. But somehow, in the space between her dreams and reality, she'd forgotten the most important lesson she taught her clients every day. A queen doesn't beg for recognition. She creates her own crown. The thought sparked something in her chest, not hope exactly, but the first stirring of something that felt dangerously like possibility. Marina turned onto her side, watching Rael's profile in the moonlight, and made a silent promise to herself. Tomorrow, she would begin to remember who she was before she became half of something that had never truly been whole. Outside their window, London slept, unaware that in one of its most beautiful homes, a woman was beginning to wake up. The revelation came on a Tuesday morning, in the most mundane way possible. Marina was organizing Rael's home office while he was traveling, a task she'd taken on years ago as a gesture of support that had somehow become an expected duty. As she straightened papers on his desk, a credit card statement slipped from between the pages of a financial report. Marina's eyes scanned the charges automatically, noting the usual pattern of expensive restaurants and luxury purchases. But one entry made her pause, then read again with growing confusion. The Langham Hotel, a charge for their premium suite, dated just 2 weeks ago. But 2 weeks ago, Rael had been in London, sleeping in their bed beside her. Her hands trembled slightly as she continued reading. More hotel charges scattered across the past 6 months. Jewelry purchases from Tiffany, pieces she'd never seen. Restaurant bills for 2 at places she'd never been, always during times when Rael claimed to be working late or traveling for business. The evidence painted a picture so clear that Marina wondered how she'd been blind to it for so long. Or perhaps she hadn't been blind. Perhaps she'd simply chosen not to see, hoping that her faith in their marriage could somehow will it back to life. Marina sank into Rael's leather chair, the credit card statement still clutched in her shaking hands. The numbers blurred as tears she'd been holding back for months finally spilled over. But beneath the hurt, beneath the sense of betrayal, something else was stirring. Anger, pure, clean anger that burned away the fog of self-doubt she'd been living in. The sound of her phone buzzing jolted her back to the present. A text from her assistant. Mrs. Montgomery's daughter wants to book an appointment. Says you're the only one she trusts for her wedding hair trial. Marina wiped her eyes and stood, her spine straightening with each breath. She had clients depending on her, a business that demanded her full attention. Whatever was happening in her marriage would have to wait until she could process it properly. But as she drove to the salon, Marina couldn't shake the questions swirling in her mind. Who was Rael with during those hotel stays? How long had this been going on? And perhaps, most importantly, why wasn't she more surprised? The day at the salon passed in a blur of appointments and consultations. Marina moved through her routine with practiced professionalism, but her mind kept drifting back to those damning credit card charges. During her lunch break, she found herself researching private investigators on her laptop, though she wasn't sure she was ready for whatever truth they might uncover. "Marina, you seem distracted today," observed Patricia, one of her senior stylists, during a brief lull between clients. "Everything all right at home?" Marina forced a smile, but Patricia's knowing look suggested she wasn't fooled. Patricia had been with the salon since the beginning, had watched Marina's marriage slowly deteriorate over the years, though she'd been too tactful to say anything directly. "Just thinking about expanding the business," Marina deflected. "Maybe. It's time we opened a second location." It wasn't entirely a lie. Marina had been considering expansion for months, but Rael had dismissed the idea, claiming she should focus on perfecting her current operation before taking on more responsibility. His words had stung, carrying the implication that her success was somehow incomplete, temporary. That evening, Marina arrived home to find Rael's car in the driveway. She paused before entering the house, steeling herself for another evening of polite conversation and careful distance. But when she walked into the kitchen, she found him on the phone, his voice animated in a way she rarely heard anymore. "No, sweetheart," he was saying, his back to Marina as he gazed out the window. "I'll make it up to you, I promise. This weekend will be perfect." Marina froze, the endearment hitting her like a physical blow. When was the last time Rail had called her sweetheart? When was the last time he'd made promises about perfect weekends? Rail turned, startled to see her standing there. His face shifted quickly from surprise to guilt, to his usual mask of distant politeness. "I have to go," he said into the phone, ending the call abruptly. "Work call?" Marina asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Client consultation," Rail replied, but he couldn't quite meet her eyes. "You know how demanding they can be." Marina nodded, playing along with the charade, because she wasn't ready for the confrontation that honesty would bring. But as they moved through the motions of dinner conversation, she found herself studying her husband with new eyes. The way he checked his phone constantly, the subtle changes in his appearance, new cologne, more attention to his grooming, a certain energy that seemed to have nothing to do with his work success. After dinner, Rail retreated to his office claiming he had emails to catch up on. Marina went upstairs and ran a bath, sinking into the warm water as her mind raced. The credit card statement was just one piece of the puzzle, but combined with the phone call she'd overheard, the picture was becoming undeniably clear. Her husband was having an affair. The thought should have devastated her, but instead Marina felt something unexpected. Relief. Relief that her instincts hadn't been wrong, that the distance she'd felt wasn't just her imagination. Relief that she finally had a reason for the loneliness that had been consuming her. As she soaked in the tub, Marina let herself remember what it felt like to be desired, valued, chosen. There had been a time when Rail couldn't keep his hands off her, when he'd called her beautiful and meant it, when their connection had been electric and all-consuming. That woman, the one who'd been confident in her worth, who'd believed she deserved passion and devotion, was still inside her somewhere. Marina's phone buzzed with a message from Sophia. "Tomorrow's schedule is packed, but Lady Margaret specifically requested you for her daughter's engagement party prep. She says you're the only one who understands true elegance." A small smile played at Marina's lips. Her clients saw her value, even if her husband had forgotten it. Every day, women sat in her chair and left feeling more beautiful, more confident, more worthy. She'd built a reputation on transformation, on helping others see their own power. Perhaps it was time to apply those skills to herself. The next morning, Marina woke with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. She dressed carefully, choosing an emerald green dress that hugged her curves and made her skin glow. Her reflection in the mirror showed a woman who was still stunning, still vibrant, still worthy of love and respect. At the salon, Marina threw herself into her work with renewed energy. Each client received her full attention, her complete artistry. She listened to their stories, celebrated their victories, and reminded them of their inherent worth. By the end of the day, she felt more like herself than she had in months. As she was closing up, Marina made a decision. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number she'd found during her lunch break research. "Blackstone Investigations," a crisp voice answered. "I'd like to schedule a consultation," Marina said, her voice steady. "I need to know the truth about my marriage." The appointment was set for the following day. As Marina drove home, she felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. Once she had proof, there would be no going back to the comfortable lies they'd been living. But she was beginning to realize that comfort wasn't worth the cost of her self-respect. That night, as Rail worked late in his office, Marina sat in their bedroom and began to plan. She wouldn't be the kind of woman who begged and pleaded, who diminished herself for someone who'd already chosen to diminish her. She'd built a successful business from nothing. She could certainly rebuild her life. The woman in the mirror smiled back at her, and for the first time in years, Marina recognized her completely. The queen had never left. She'd just been waiting for the right moment to reclaim her throne. The private investigator's office was nothing like Marina had expected. Instead of the seedy, smoke-filled room from movies, Sarah Blackstone's headquarters occupied a sleek space in Canary Wharf, all glass and steel with views of the Thames. Sarah herself was a polished woman in her 40s, with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Mrs. Williams," Sarah said, gesturing to a comfortable chair across from her desk, "I understand you have some concerns about your marriage." Marina had rehearsed this conversation, but sitting here now, the words felt foreign in her mouth. "I believe my husband is having an affair. I need proof." Sarah's expression remained professional as she opened a leather portfolio. "What's led you to this conclusion?" Marina detailed the credit card charges, the overheard phone call, the gradual changes in Rael's behavior. As she spoke, she watched Sarah take notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions with the detached efficiency of someone who'd heard similar stories countless times. "How long do you suspect this has been going on?" Sarah asked. "I'm not sure. The charges go back at least 6 months, but..." Marina paused, remembering. "There have been signs for longer, maybe 2 years. 2 years. The number hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. 2 years of lies, of Marina blaming herself for the distance in their marriage, of believing she could somehow love hard enough to bridge the growing gap. "I'll need access to additional financial records, phone bills, travel schedules," Sarah continued. "The more information you can provide, the faster we can get you answers." Marina nodded, already mentally cataloguing where she could find the requested documents. A part of her still hoped she was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation for everything, but a larger part, the part that had watched her husband become a stranger, already knew the truth. The investigation took exactly 5 days. Marina was at the salon, putting the finishing touches on a client's highlights, when Sarah called. "Can you meet me this afternoon? I have the information you requested." The hours until their meeting crawled by. Marina moved through her appointments mechanically, her smile professional but hollow. When Patricia asked if she was feeling well, Marina claimed she was fighting off a cold. It wasn't entirely untrue. She felt sick to her core, though not from any virus. Sarah's expression was gentle, but resolute when Marina returned to the office. A manila envelope sat on the desk between them, thick with documents that would forever change Marina's understanding of her marriage. "Her name is Joyce Patterson," Sarah began without preamble. "She's 28, works in marketing for a luxury fashion brand. Blonde, white, comes from old money. Her father owns a shipping company." Marina's hands clenched in her lap. Somehow, having a name made it worse, more real. Joyce. She tried to picture this woman who'd been sharing her husband for 2 years, who'd been receiving the attention and affection that should have been Marina's. They meet primarily at the Langham Hotel, but also at her apartment in Chelsea. According to the credit card records, he's been supporting her lifestyle, expensive dinners, shopping trips, jewelry. The relationship appears serious, not just a casual affair. Sarah slid several photographs across the desk. Marina's breath caught as she saw her husband of 6 years, looking happier and more animated than she'd seen him in their own home in months. In one photo, he was helping Joyce out of his car, his hand protectively on her lower back. In another, they were at an intimate restaurant table, Rael leaning forward as if hanging on her every word, but it was the final photograph that broke something inside Marina's chest. Rael and Joyce walking hand in hand through Harrods, her left hand clearly visible and sporting a stunning diamond ring that Marina had never seen. "Is he..." Marina's voice cracked. Are they engaged? Sarah's expression softened with something like pity. The ring appears recent, purchased last week, according to the credit card records. I'm sorry, Mrs. Williams. Marina stared at the photographs, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. 2 years of lies. 2 years of making her feel like she was imagining problems, like she was asking for too much when she simply wanted her husband to act like he loved her. 2 years of this Joyce woman receiving the man Marina had fallen in love with, while she got the cold, distant stranger who came home each night. There's more, Sarah said quietly. They've been house hunting, high-end properties in Notting Hill. It appears your husband is planning to leave his current situation. The clinical language couldn't soften the blow. Rael wasn't just having an affair. He was building an entire new life with another woman, planning to discard his marriage like an outdated business model. Marina gathered the photographs and documents, her hands steadier than she felt. Thank you, Sarah. Send me your final bill. Mrs. Williams, I have to ask, do you have somewhere safe to stay? Sometimes when men realize they've been caught, they can become... He won't hurt me, Marina said with more certainty than she felt. Rael's too concerned with his image for anything that messy. He'll probably be relieved that I know. The drive home passed in a strange fog. Marina felt detached from her body, as if she was watching someone else navigate London traffic with a marriage-ending revelation sitting in the passenger seat. Part of her mind was already planning. Lawyer consultations, financial preparations, the logistics of untangling 6 years of shared life. But another part was mourning. Mourning the man she'd thought she married, the future they'd planned together, the naive woman who'd believed that pure love could overcome any obstacle. Marina pulled into their driveway and sat for a moment, staring at the house that had never quite felt like home. Rael's car wasn't there, probably with Joyce, planning their new life while his current wife dealt with the aftermath of his deception. Inside, the house felt different, as if the knowledge of Rael's betrayal had physically altered the space. Marina walked through rooms that suddenly seemed like stage sets, beautiful but hollow, designed to project an image rather than shelter a real relationship. She went to their bedroom and opened Rael's closet, running her hands over his expensive suits and handmade shirts. How many times had he worn these clothes to meet Joyce? How many times had Marina complimented his appearance, unknowingly helping him dress for another woman? The sound of the front door opening made Marina's heart race. She heard Rael's footsteps on the marble floor, the jingle of his keys being dropped in the bowl by the entrance. Normal sounds of a husband coming home, except nothing about their marriage had been normal for a very long time. "Marina," he called, "you home?" She took a deep breath, gathered the photographs from the bed where she'd spread them out, and went downstairs to face the man who'd been living a double life. Rael was in the kitchen, loosening his tie as he checked his phone. He looked up when she entered, and Marina saw the exact moment he registered something different in her expression. His casual smile faltered, replaced by the wary look of someone who knew they'd been caught. "We need to talk," Marina said simply, placing the envelope on the kitchen island between them. Rael's eyes flicked to the envelope, then back to her face. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he sighed, a sound that held more resignation than remorse. "I suppose we do," he said quietly. Marina had imagined this moment for days, had planned what she would say, how she would confront him. But now, faced with the reality of his betrayal laid out in black and white photographs, she found herself strangely calm. 2 years, Rael. 2 years you've been with her while lying to me every single day. He didn't deny it. That at least was something. Marina had expected excuses, justifications, attempts to minimize what he'd done. Instead, Rael simply nodded, looking more tired than ashamed. "How long have you been planning to leave me for?" Her. This question seemed to surprise him. "Marina, it's not that simple. Actually, it is. Marina's voice was steady, controlled. You've been having an affair for 2 years. You bought her an engagement ring. You're house hunting together. It seems quite simple to me. Rael leaned against the counter, studying his wife with something like curiosity. You hired a private investigator. I had to. You certainly weren't going to tell me the truth. They stood in the kitchen where they'd shared thousands of meals, where Marina had once imagined raising children, and faced the end of everything they'd built together. But as Marina looked at her husband, really looked at him, she realized she wasn't looking at the love of her life anymore. She was looking at a stranger who happened to share her last name. I never meant for it to happen this way, Rael said. Finally. Marina almost laughed at the cliché. How did you mean for it to happen then? Were you planning to tell me about Joyce before or after you moved in with her? The question hung in the air, and Marina realized she didn't actually need an answer. The truth was written in every late night, every dismissive comment, every moment when Rael had made her feel like she was asking too much by simply wanting to be loved by her own husband. I want a divorce, Marina said, the words coming out, strong and clear. And I want you out of this house by the end of the week. Rael's eyebrows rose. Marina, don't you think we should discuss? No. Marina's voice cut through his words like a blade. We're done discussing. We're done pretending. You made your choice, Rael. Now live with it. As she walked out of the kitchen, leaving her husband with the evidence of his betrayal, Marina felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Freedom. The cage door was finally open, and she was ready to remember what it felt like to fly. The divorce papers were filed on a Friday morning in early October. Marina walked out of her lawyer's office into crisp autumn air that seemed to fill her lungs differently, cleaner, lighter, full of possibility. The woman who'd entered that building an hour earlier had been Rael Williams' wife. The woman who emerged was simply Marina, and that felt like coming home to herself. The past month had been a whirlwind of legal consultations, financial disclosures, and the complex untangling of a life she'd thought was permanent. Rael had moved out without much drama, taking his suits and his secrets to what Marina assumed was Joyce's apartment. The house felt different without him, not empty, but spacious. Room to breathe, room to become. Marina had thrown herself into work with a fierce energy that surprised even Patricia. The salon had never been busier, and Marina found herself booking clients months in advance. Word of mouth had spread through London's social circles, and she was now styling hair for premieres, galas and society weddings. Success felt different when it was purely her own, not something she had to downplay or apologize for. Marina, darling, you look absolutely radiant, gushed Lady Catherine during her weekly appointment. Divorce clearly agrees with you. Marina smiled, her hands working expertly through Lady Catherine's silver hair. I prefer to think of it as remembering who I was before I forgot. It was true. Each day since Rael's departure had brought small revelations about the woman she'd been before she'd started dimming her light to make someone else comfortable. She'd redecorated the house, choosing bold colors and art that spoke to her soul. She'd started taking evening classes in business management, not because she needed them, but because learning made her feel alive. She'd even begun dating. Nothing serious, just reminders that men still found her attractive, still valued her company. The transformation wasn't just internal. Marina had always been beautiful, but now she carried herself differently. There was a confidence in her movements, a spark in her eyes that hadn't been there during her marriage. She dressed for herself now, in colors that made her glow, in styles that celebrated her body rather than hiding from attention. Mrs. Williams, or should I say Ms. Thompson now? Patricia grinned as Marina reclaimed her maiden name. You have a new client consultation this afternoon, someone named Cesar Montoya. The name meant nothing to Marina, but she nodded absently, focused on the intricate braiding she was creating for her current client. It wasn't until later that afternoon, when she looked up to see a man walking into her salon, that Marina understood why Patricia had seemed so excited. Cesar Montoya was the kind of man who commanded attention without trying. Tall and elegant, with silver-threaded black hair and the kind of bone structure that belonged in Renaissance paintings, he moved with the quiet confidence of someone completely comfortable in his own skin. His suit was understated but clearly expensive, and when he smiled at the receptionist, the whole room seemed to brighten. "Ms. Thompson?" His voice carried a slight accent, Spanish, Marina thought, and his eyes were the warm brown of expensive cognac. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." Marina felt something flutter in her chest that she hadn't experienced in years. Pure, uncomplicated attraction. This man was looking at her as if she was the most interesting person in the room, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Marina felt genuinely flustered. "Of course, Mr. Montoya, how can I help you today?" Caesar's smile widened, and Marina noticed the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. "Actually, it's for my sister. She's getting married next month, and she's heard incredible things about your work. The problem is, she's in Barcelona and won't be in London until the day before the wedding." They spent the next hour discussing styles and techniques, but Marina found herself increasingly distracted by Cesar himself. He listened intently when she spoke, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely interested in her artistry. When he laughed at one of her stories about difficult clients, the sound was rich and warm, and Marina realized she'd been unconsciously leaning closer to him across her consultation table. "You're very passionate about your work," Cesar observed, his eyes studying her face with an intensity that made Marina's skin tingle. "It's refreshing to meet someone who's found their calling." "And what about you, Mr. Montoya? What's your calling?" "Cesar, please, and I suppose you could say I work with beautiful things too. I deal in diamonds, finding them, cutting them, bringing out their true brilliance." His gaze held hers. "I have an eye for recognizing real value when I see it." The conversation continued long past what a normal consultation would require, neither of them seeming eager to end it. Marina learned that Cesar was 42, originally from Colombia but educated in Europe, had built his diamond business from a single stone his grandfather had found in a riverbed. He was cultured, well-traveled, and when he spoke about his work, his passion was evident. More importantly, he treated Marina like an equal, not as decoration or accessory, but as an accomplished woman whose opinions mattered. When she mentioned her plans to expand the salon, he didn't dismiss the idea or suggest she be cautious. Instead, he asked intelligent questions about her business model and offered insights from his own entrepreneurial experience. "I should let you get back to your other clients," Cesar said eventually, though he made no move to leave. "But I wonder, would you consider having dinner with me? I'd love to continue our conversation somewhere less professional." Marina's pulse quickened. It had been years since a man had asked her on a real date, years since she'd felt this kind of electric attraction. "I'd like that very much." They arranged to meet the following evening at a small, elegant restaurant in Covent Garden. As Cesar left, he paused at the door and looked back at Marina. "Until tomorrow, then. I have a feeling it's going to be a memorable evening." After he'd gone, Marina found herself smiling for no reason, humming as she cleaned her station. Patricia appeared at her elbow, grinning broadly. "Well, that was interesting," Patricia observed. "Handsome, successful, and he couldn't take his eyes off you. When's the last time a client asked you out?" "Never," Marina admitted, still feeling slightly stunned by the encounter. "And he's not really a client, just booking for his sister, even." "Better. No professional complications." Patricia's expression grew serious. "You deserve this, Marina. You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are. That evening, Marina stood in her newly redecorated bedroom, trying on different outfits for her date with Caesar. She'd forgotten how exciting this feeling could be. The anticipation, the flutter of nerves, the delicious uncertainty of new attraction. She finally settled on a deep blue dress that hugged her curves and made her skin glow, paired with gold jewelry that caught the light when she moved. The restaurant Caesar had chosen was intimate and sophisticated, with soft lighting and discreet service. He was already waiting when Marina arrived, rising to greet her with a smile that made her forget every self-doubt she'd harbored on the drive over. "You look absolutely stunning," he said, taking her hand briefly, "though I have to admit I was already captivated by your beauty yesterday." Marina felt heat rise in her cheeks. It had been so long since someone had complimented her so directly, so genuinely. "Thank you. You look quite handsome yourself." The conversation flowed as easily as it had at the salon. Cesar was intelligent and funny, well-read and curious about the world. He asked about Marina's journey to success, listened intently to her stories, and shared his own experiences building a business in a competitive industry. "I started with nothing but determination and one perfect diamond," he told her over the main course. "My grandfather found it when I was 12, spent years teaching me how to read stones, how to see their potential beneath the rough exterior. By the time I was 25, I'd turned that one diamond into a small but respected business. And now..." Caesar's smile was modest but confident. "Now I work with collectors and investors around the world. We find the extraordinary stones, the ones that take your breath away. It's not about size or obvious beauty. It's about recognizing something special when others might overlook it." Marina felt his words resonate deeply. "That's exactly how I feel about my work. Every woman who sits in my chair has something magnificent inside her. My job is just to help bring it to the surface." "Exactly." Caesar's eyes held hers across the candlelit table. Beauty that's been there all along, waiting for the right person to recognize its worth. The double meaning wasn't lost on either of them. Marina felt something shifting inside her chest, a warmth she'd almost forgotten existed. This man saw her, really saw her, in a way that Rael never had. As the evening progressed, Marina found herself laughing more than she had in years. Cesar had a gift for storytelling, regaling her with tales of his travels to remote mines, his encounters with eccentric collectors, and the occasional mishap that came with dealing in precious stones. "There was this one time in Myanmar," he said, his eyes dancing with mischief. "I was negotiating for a remarkable ruby when the seller's pet monkey decided my hair looked interesting. Spent 20 minutes with this monkey, rearranging my carefully styled appearance while trying to close a $1 million deal." Marina laughed until tears formed in her eyes. "Please tell me you got the ruby." "I did, but my dignity never quite recovered. The seller said the monkey was a good judge of character, so I must be trustworthy." Caesar's expression grew more serious. "Sometimes the most valuable things come from the most unexpected places." The restaurant began to empty around them, but neither seemed eager to end the evening. When Caesar suggested a walk along the Thames, Marina agreed without hesitation. London at night was magical, the lights reflecting off the water as they strolled side by side. Marina felt alive in a way she'd forgotten was possible. Every nerve ending seemed heightened, every breath filled with potential. "Marina," Caesar said as they paused near Westminster Bridge, "I have to be honest with you. I didn't really need a consultation for my sister." Marina's heart skipped, though she found herself smiling rather than upset. "Oh?" "I've been hearing about the extraordinary Marina Thompson for months. Lady Catherine is a friend of my family. She couldn't stop talking about the talented, beautiful woman who'd transformed her entire perspective on herself. I had to meet you. So your sister isn't getting married? Cesar's grin was boyish and charming. Oh, she is, but she's perfectly capable of doing her own hair. I just wanted an excuse to meet the woman who's become legendary in certain circles of London society. Marina should have been annoyed by the deception, but instead she felt flattered, desired in a way that made her pulse race. That's quite an elaborate plan, just to ask someone out. You're quite an extraordinary woman. Extraordinary women deserve extraordinary gestures. He stepped closer, and Marina could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. When he raised his hand to touch her cheek, she didn't pull away. May I kiss you, Marina? The question was asked with such genuine respect, such consideration for her choice, that Marina felt something click into place inside her heart. This was how a woman should be courted, cherished, desired. Yes, she whispered. Caesar's kiss was everything Marina remembered kisses could be, tender but passionate, respectful but thrilling. When they broke apart, she felt dizzy with possibility. I'd very much like to see you again, Caesar said softly. I'd like that too. As he walked her to her car, Marina felt like she was floating. This was what she'd been missing. What she'd convinced herself she could live without. Not just romance, but genuine connection. Not just attraction, but respect and appreciation. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of dates and phone calls, stolen moments between clients, and long conversations that stretched into the early morning hours. Caesar courted her properly, with flowers and thoughtful gifts, with attention to her words and interest in her dreams. He came to the salon often, always with a legitimate reason, bringing coffee for the staff, consulting about a piece of jewelry for a client, picking Marina up for lunch. But she could feel his eyes on her as she worked, could sense his admiration for her skill and artistry. He's smitten, Patricia observed one afternoon after Cesar had left. And you're glowing like a woman in love. Marina paused in her sweeping, considering the words. Was she falling in love? The question should have terrified her. It had been less than 2 months since her divorce was finalized. But what she felt for Caesar was so different from what she'd experienced with Rael. This was built on mutual respect, shared laughter, genuine appreciation for who she was rather than who someone wanted her to become. The revelation came during their 6th date, at Caesar's penthouse apartment overlooking Hyde Park. Marina had been nervous about the invitation, knowing it suggested an intimacy they hadn't yet explored. But when she arrived, she found candles and soft music, a carefully prepared dinner that spoke of effort and thoughtfulness rather than expectation. You cooked, Marina observed, touched by the gesture. I wanted tonight to be special, just us, no distractions. Caesar helped her out of her coat, his hands lingering on her shoulders. I have something I want to show you. He led her to a small room off the main living area that served as his private office. The walls were lined with safes and display cases, but Caesar went to a particular drawer and withdrew a small velvet box. This is what I was working on when we met, he said, opening the box to reveal the most stunning diamond Marina had ever seen. It wasn't the largest stone, but it seemed to capture and reflect light in ways that took her breath away. A perfect diamond, flawless and brilliant. I've been saving it for something special. Marina gasped at its beauty. It's magnificent. Who's it for? Caesar's eyes met hers, and she saw something in their depths that made her pulse quicken. I was hoping it might be for you. The room seemed to spin around Marina. Cesar, we've only been seeing each other for 6 weeks, he finished. I know it's fast. I know you're just coming out of a difficult marriage. But Marina, I've never felt anything like this before. You're extraordinary. Not just beautiful, but brilliant and strong and passionate about life. I don't want to waste time pretending I feel less than I do. Marina stared at the diamond, then at the man holding it. In the soft light, Cesar looked like something from a dream, handsome, successful, and offering her everything she'd thought she'd given up hope of finding. "I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow," he continued, setting the box aside and taking her hands. "I'm asking you to consider a future with me, to let me show you how a woman like you deserves to be loved." The word hung between them. Love. Marina felt tears prick her eyes, but they were tears of joy rather than sorrow. After years of feeling invisible, unworthy, forgotten, here was a man who saw her value clearly. "I love you too," she whispered, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. When Cesar kissed her this time, it was with the passion of a man claiming his future. Marina melted into his arms, finally understanding the difference between settling for someone and choosing someone who chose her back. That night, as they made love with a tenderness and intensity that left Marina breathless, she felt the last pieces of her old life falling away. The woman who'd begged for scraps of attention from a man who'd already given his heart elsewhere was gone. In her place was a queen who knew her worth, who demanded the love she deserved. As dawn broke over London, Marina lay in Caesar's arms and smiled. She thought her story was ending when she discovered Rael's betrayal. Instead, it had been the first chapter of something beautiful. 6 months later, Marina stood in the bridal suite of London's most exclusive hotel, putting the finishing touches on what would be her final client before her own wedding. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same hands that had discovered her husband's affair through a credit card statement were now fastening a diamond necklace around the neck of a radiant bride. "Marina, you're a miracle worker," breathed the bride, staring at her reflection in wonder. "I've never felt so beautiful." Marina smiled, adjusting a single curl to frame the woman's face perfectly. "You've always been beautiful, Sarah. I just helped you see it." As Sarah swept out to meet her groom, Marina allowed herself a moment to reflect on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this point. The divorce from Rael had been finalized 3 months ago, swift and surprisingly amicable once. The lawyers got involved. He'd kept his tech company and his new life with Joyce, while Marina had emerged with the house, half their shared assets, and most importantly, her freedom. The business had exploded beyond her wildest dreams. Word of her talent had spread through London's elite circles like wildfire, and she now had a waiting list that stretched 6 months out. But more than success, Marina had found something she'd lost during her marriage: joy in her work, pride in her accomplishments, and the unshakable knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged. Patricia appeared in the doorway, her eyes bright with excitement. "Marina, it's time. Your car is here." Marina took one last look at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was transformed from the uncertain, diminished person she'd been a year ago. Her wedding dress was a masterpiece of silk and lace, custom-made by one of London's top designers. But it was her expression that showed the real change: confidence, joy, and the unmistakable glow of a woman deeply loved. The ride to the venue passed in a blur of London streets decorated with late spring flowers. Marina's heart raced with anticipation rather than nerves. After everything she'd been through, she had no doubts about the choice she was making today. The wedding was being held at Caesar's estate outside London, a Georgian manor house that had been in his family for generations. Gardens stretched as far as the eye could see, ablaze with roses and peonies, while a string quartet played softly for the intimate gathering of family and close friends. As Marina stepped out of the car, she saw familiar faces from her salon, Zeza's business associates, and various members of London society who had become not just clients, but genuine friends. Lady Catherine dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, while Patricia beamed with motherly pride. But it was the man waiting at the altar who took Marina's breath away. Caesar stood tall and elegant in his morning coat, his silver-threaded hair catching the afternoon sunlight. When their eyes met across the garden, his face lit up with such pure love that Marina felt her knees go weak. As she walked down the petal-strewn aisle, Marina's mind drifted to her first wedding, 6 years ago. That day had been about fairy tale dreams and youthful hope. Today was about choice, the conscious decision to build a life with someone who valued her completely. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, but Marina barely heard the words. She was lost in Caesar's eyes, in the warmth of his hands holding hers, in the certainty that this was right in every way that mattered. When it came time for vows, Caesar spoke first, his accented voice carrying clearly across the garden. "Marina, when I first saw you, I thought you were the most beautiful woman I'd ever encountered. But as I got to know you, I realized that your beauty was just the beginning. Your strength, your passion, your incredible capacity for love. These are the things that captured my heart completely." He paused, his thumb stroking across her knuckles. "You taught me that the most precious diamonds are often found in unexpected places, hidden beneath layers that need to be carefully removed to reveal the treasure within. You are my treasure, my perfect diamond, and I promise to spend every day of our life together making sure you never forget your worth." Marina felt tears streaming down her cheeks as she began her own vows. "Caesar, you came into my life when I had forgotten who I was, when I had accepted that love was something I had to earn rather than something I deserved. You showed me that real love doesn't diminish you. It elevates you. It sees your potential and helps you become the best version of yourself." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "You chose me not in spite of my independence, but because of it. You celebrate my success instead of feeling threatened by it. You make me feel like the queen I always was, but had forgotten how to be. I promise to love you with the same fierce devotion you've shown me, to build dreams with you instead of shrinking my own to fit someone else's vision." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Caesar's kiss was tender and triumphant, witnessed by cheers from their guests and the golden glow of late afternoon sun. The reception was a perfect reflection of their combined styles. Elegant, but warm, sophisticated, but genuine. Marina moved through the celebration like she was floating, accepting congratulations and best wishes from people who had watched her transformation over the past year. During dinner, she caught sight of a familiar figure at the edge of the garden. For a moment, her breath caught. Rael stood by the garden gate, not trying to enter, but simply watching from a distance. Their eyes met across the space, and Marina saw something in his expression she'd never seen during their marriage. Regret. Excuse. "Me for just a moment," she murmured to Cesar, who followed her gaze and nodded with understanding. Marina walked to the gate, her wedding dress rustling in the evening breeze. Up close, Rael looked older than his 38 years, worn down in a way that success had never managed. "Hello, Rael," she said quietly. "Marina." His voice was hoarse. You look incredible. Happy." "I am happy." Marina studied her ex-husband's face. "What are you doing here?" Rael's hands twisted together, a nervous gesture she'd never seen from him before. "I wanted to see you, to apologize, to tell you that I know I was wrong." Marina waited, saying nothing. "Joyce and we broke up 3 months ago. Turns out building a relationship on deception isn't a strong foundation." His laugh was bitter. "She said I was emotionally unavailable, that I never really let her in. Sound familiar?" "I'm sorry to hear that," Marina said, and meant it. She felt no satisfaction in his pain, only a sad recognition of patterns that perhaps he was finally seeing clearly. "I had everything," Rael continued, his voice breaking slightly. "A beautiful, successful, incredible wife who loved me completely. And I threw it away for what? An ego boost, the thrill of something forbidden. I look at you now, glowing and radiant and so obviously cherished, and I realize what I lost." Marina felt something shift inside her chest. Not love returning, but a final piece of hurt dissolving. "Rael, we weren't right for each other. I spent years trying to be smaller, quieter, less threatening to your ego. That wasn't love, it was fear on both our parts. You were never the problem, Marina. I was just too stupid and selfish to see it." "We both made mistakes," Marina said gently, "but they led us to where we needed to be. You'll find someone who's right for you, someone who appreciates what you have to offer. And I found someone who sees my worth." Rael nodded, tears visible in his eyes. "He's a lucky man." "I'm the lucky one," Marina corrected. "I learned that I don't need someone to complete me. I needed someone who complements the complete person I already was." As Rael walked away, disappearing into the London evening, Marina felt the final chapter of her old life closing. When she returned to the reception, Caesar was waiting with a concerned expression. "Everything all right, my love?" Marina went into his arms, feeling the solid strength of him, breathing in his familiar scent. "Everything is perfect, just saying goodbye to the past." As the evening progressed, Marina found herself surrounded by the life she'd built. Her successful business, her genuine friendships, her loving husband who treated her like the treasure she was. During the dancing, as Caesar spun her around the temporary dance floor set up in the garden, Marina caught her reflection in the manor house windows. The woman looking back at her was radiant with joy, crowned not with a tiara, but with the unshakable knowledge of her own worth. She had been tested by betrayal and emerged stronger. She had loved unwisely and learned to love better. She had been diminished and chosen to shine brighter. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Montoya?" Cesar whispered in her ear as they swayed. To the music, Marina smiled at her new name, at the promise it held. "I'm thinking about diamonds," she said. "How they're formed under pressure, how they need to be carefully cut and polished to reveal their true brilliance. And I'm thinking that maybe everything I went through was necessary to become the woman I am today. The woman worthy of a love like this." Caesar pulled back to look at her face, his expression serious. "Marina, you were always worthy. You just needed someone who recognized your value." As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Marina and Caesar stood on the terrace of his manor house, looking out over gardens that were now legally hers as well. In the distance, London glittered like scattered diamonds, full of possibility and promise. "Any regrets?" Caesar asked, his arm around her waist. Marina thought of the scared woman who had discovered those credit card statements, who had been willing to settle for crumbs of affection from a man who had already given his heart elsewhere. She thought of the journey from that broken place to this moment of complete joy. "None," she said firmly. "Every step led me to you, to this life, to remembering who I really am." Above them, stars emerged in the darkening sky, each one a point of light in the vast darkness. Marina had learned that she was like those stars, brilliant not because of the darkness around her, but in spite of it. She had found her way back to her own light, and now she had someone who would help her shine even brighter. As they headed inside to begin their new life together, Marina caught a glimpse of herself in the hall mirror. The woman looking back was a queen in every sense that mattered, not because of a crown or title, but because she knew her worth and demanded nothing less than the love she deserved. The girl who had believed love could change people was gone, replaced by a woman who understood that real love doesn't change you. It reveals who you've always been. And Marina had always been a queen. She just needed to remember how to wear her crown. In the end, that was the most beautiful transformation of all.